Our Committee of the Whole meeting for Monday, November 21st. So just a reminder, this is a work-type meeting where we discuss particular topics. Our business meeting is at 7. So at this point, the first point of order here is just a call to order. And I am calling this meeting officially to order and asking Clerk Borling to please call the roll.
Commissioner Decker. Commissioner Hess.
Present.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Present.
Commissioner Juarez.
Present.
Commissioner Pradel.
Present.
Vice Mayor Cooney. Mayor Anderson.
Here. May I have a motion to excuse Vice Mayor Cooney and Commissioner Decker, Committee of the Whole meeting?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Hoffman.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Hess. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. Motion passes. Communications, Manager Ritzma.
Nothing, Your Honor.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. Now is the opportunity for public comments. Just a reminder that there will be a public comment opportunity available during our business meeting at 7 as well. Public comments at the Committee of the Whole are limited to 2 minutes. And first, we will start with anyone in the chambers. Is there anyone in the chambers who would like to provide a public comment for this meeting? Seeing no one, our good Deputy City Manager Chamberlain, do we have any call-in comments for this meeting?
We'll check. We do not have any comments.
Thank you, DCM Chamberlain. Appreciate that. No special agenda items, I assume, so we're down to the work of this session. Manager Ritzma.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight we want to preview the recommendation for ARPA funding for 2023 and beyond. And so we're going to go through a presentation here, if we can call it up, and you're going to hear from various directors this evening about the recommended programs and requests and get more detail about them. And then we'll wrap things up with questions and answers, and then what takes place after this as far as the budget goes. So want to remind everyone of the ARPA Commission priorities. These were set in February of this year at our retreat. We have economic development, housing, infrastructure, safety, and youth. And then as those relate to our strategic vision and the Imagine Kalamazoo 2025 goals, you can see the ones highlighted there are where the priorities plug in. And so the requests that you'll see tonight will center around those goals that are highlighted. So without further ado, I will call forward our CFO, Steve Vicenci, and he can get us started. Steve?
I'm going to start you off here. We will have our 2023 ARPA plan here in the upcoming slides. And I just want to point out that this plan that you'll see in these slides shows everything that we've approved from 2021 through planned or anticipated expenditures through 2026. As for tonight, we're really focusing on the 2023 column on these slides. And I guess with that, I will turn it over to our Economic Development Director, Antonio Mitchell, to talk about the economic development category of our ARPA expenditures.
Welcome, Mr. Mitchell.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mayor, City Manager, Vice Mayor, City Attorney, and Commissioners for having us here as staff to talk about this opportunity that we have to take advantage of these funds and to make a difference in the community. So, first of all, my first item is economic development, discussion of those items, and then I'll be talking about housing development items underneath the ARPA funding opportunity. And starting off, I'm gonna have to switch back and forth with my glasses, it's hard to say, is the facade program, $375,000. That will give us the ability to work with pretty much a minimum of 15 businesses to assist with facade programs. White box definition is build out of interior design initiative. A lot of our commercial development projects, what happens is you as a developer, you'll prep the site and develop pretty much a white box and everything, meaning it's ready for development. But the owner of the property doesn't put the money into putting that restaurant in there or putting whatever that commercial space in. This funding is pretty much gap financing up to $25,000 to assist in that process. It has been very successful in working with a number of our businesses in the community. We've pretty much worked with like Grayling Ceramics, which was on the north side. We assisted them in their relocation into the Edison neighborhood off of Portage Avenue. And they built out pretty much a building there. We assisted them with a facade and a white box assistance. I think we had some mayor and commissioners and everything do a tour. I think you went on a tour, Mayor Anderson, of that expansion and growth, which was great. They used to be on Frank Street, and they were in the basement. So if you ever visit them in the basement at Factory Coffee location, it was definitely a step up, as they say, from the basement, because it was an old Michigan basement they were in. And so that was a great example of this type of development that assisted on both fronts. So a company could get both funding, in this case, a white box build out or facade exterior. At the same time, that is eligible for $25,000 as well for the facade. That has to be the exterior, usually it's street facing. We do, if it's a corner lot, we do two faces in some cases, side corner and the front. If it's a corner, we can assist in some cases if there's interest on the back, like the parking's in the back, we can do a front facade and a back facade as well, depending on the request by the applicant and justification. So we've done some of those as well. Some of our projects has also been in Washington Square. We've done projects on the north side, pretty much the area of North and Burdick, Ricky Thrash there, the other development there across the way. You see the facade being redone for apartment and housing development there. That's one of our projects as well. On the north side, east side neighborhood, we've worked with a number of businesses. There's some murals and some other things that's been done. That's been part of our dollars as well in the facade program. And we'll be probably sharing on a Friday, hopefully the next couple, at least weeks, hopefully some before and after pictures, hopefully in December of some development projects, if not then in January. So you'll be able to see what some of those projects on pretty much on the east side, on East Main Street, what they were and what they are now. And so we'll be able to share that a little bit more. And then you have the downtown placement. This is funding. One thing that we try to do, especially in planning, is I got my little outline here of how we focus on planning, discussion. In the past, the blessing of like just not these ARPA dollars are nice, but what we enjoy more of, which I think you guys know as commissioners, is those FFE dollars. One thing that's great about these additional dollars that's come to the table is that when we do our planning and development and discussion with the community, in the past, especially that my first go around with the city, you would do all these great plans, you would put them together in a nice little book, and literally they would stay in the book because you didn't have the funding to expand the process of making that development happen. A perfect example of this moving forward is we had, as everyone knows, we had Notre Dame come here and do this great development of downtown. That's what we're trying to implement. It's great to have a plan. Then it's great to put out an RFP to help get the right engineers and designers to put together that plan. But can you then put the dollars together for implementation? That's what we've been doing with FFE dollars, is doing the planning, doing the contracting to make sure the plans work, bringing that to the city, commission for approval of those funds to implement, and then literally implementing that development. That's what these dollars are for, is downtown placemaking was significant in that design. As you saw, all these great things that you could do downtown. Well, we have to take it to the next level and now put together what does it cost to make those implementations, and then, sorry to say, come back and get money to literally put that in progress. Like I said, we're blessed to have dollars to be able to implement with FFE. That is the blessing that we enjoy as staff, is that we can not only plan, work with the community, but now we can put money towards implementation. And so what you're looking at here is implementation of commercial development facade, white box, and then placemaking development space in our downtown area, which will include hopefully new restrooms and other aspects in the downtown area. But you gotta, let's say, make sure these spaces work and also get the cost of what it will cost us to make that implementation. Any questions before I go on to housing real quick? Yes.
Thank you, Antonio. So to be clear on the restrooms, the 500,000 budgeted isn't necessarily to build those restrooms, it's for planning for those spaces.
Correct.
Okay. And the 50, so if a business wants to apply for both a facade and white box build out, is it possible for them to receive 50K?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there'd be a combination. And also with that is that the 50K, they're not receiving the money. Pretty much we pay the contractor directly. We don't give the money to the client applicant. It goes, and then we also do agreement with the provider to understand that we will pay 50%, and then we'll pay the remaining balance of the costs at the end of the completion of the project.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Commissioner Praedel, yes.
Director Mitchell, just going to ask you for the facade grant and the white box build out. Are those, what type of funding mechanisms are those? Are those just like purely granted out without any requirement to return things at zero interest, or loan mechanisms or anything like that, or is it just purely grant?
It is purely grant. I think when I gave a presentation before, we talked about cookies on Douglas. That was back in the day, that was community development block grant dollars. You said grant dollar, but it was a loan fund at that time. The impact of the dollars is the investment. And as we were stating at that point, is that we're trying to make sure we have long-term turnaround capabilities similar to what cookies was. So as I stated back then, we made that investment in the late 90s. As they say, 22 years, 23 years later, that investment is still reaping. That is what we're trying to do, is create spaces that can be not only utilized, but be a significant tax benefit for the city for a long period of time. This money is not for nonprofits, so that needs to be made clear. It's only for-profit developments. Because I've had, quote unquote, nonprofits asked for assistance, and we cannot assist in that manner at this time.
I know previously you had mentioned there were something like 53 small businesses on the wait list for just the facade grants alone.
Yes.
So with these funds, knowing that, each entity could potentially ask for up to $50,000, do you have kind of a target you're hoping that reach, or in terms of the, say if there's an excess wait list, are there other opportunities to support them besides this ARPA proposal?
The answer is yes, but usually it's loan dollars. So we do have United Way dollars that can assist, and so the ones that we can assist immediately, we transition them to United Way if possible. And if we can't assist, everyone's not ready, even though you say you're ready. If quote unquote someone's on the list that can't be productive, we move them from that list to the end of the list, and then we move someone up, place them. Gotcha. So as you say with the waiting list, it's also the waiting list from, you could say, last year to this year. So hopefully you didn't wait a whole year to do your project. You already got it done. So we have some, because they've already completed their project, and the project is not reimbursable. You have to pretty much do the project at that time and point of application.
Cool. And just one last question as well. Say hypothetically, there's a homeowner that has a home daycare or something. Would like white box funding be eligible for somebody who has a, a home-based business that, requires certain specifications or requirements to have in their home, or if they have like a home business combo type scenario, is there any restrictions in that regard?
Pretty much just our zoning restrictions and requirements. We're heading that direction. We haven't got there yet with the home-based businesses. The goal is to tweak the program to be home-based business focused, probably in the next year and a half, 2 years. So this program has, at least on our docket as staff, 2 more years in hopefully progression. Then we hope that hopefully DDA, DAGA they would have their own acts to assist to continue that program for downtown. We would probably keep a smaller program to assist in our corridor areas. A lot of the corridor areas, Washington Square, East Main Street, North Side, we've been knocking those out right now, because remember, this is for existing buildings. It can be in a new development as well, but usually that's only the white box, not the facade program. So we're adjusting to hopefully focus on more home-based businesses like daycares and things like that for build out. But we haven't got there yet. We'll be there probably in 2024. That's the goal.
Cool. Thanks, Director Mitchell.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Housing.
All right. Housing. So we're looking at pretty much our lead program, which if hopefully you got that in the Friday notice that we've been sharing with the community that we had a total of $4.6 million. 696,000 of that is for health, home supplement, and radon mitigation. And that focus is for a 5-year initiative and extension and growth. And so because of that growth, we will use some of our CDBGs to assist with some of our matching dollars, but we'll also be using some of this $300,000 as part of pretty much our initiative for program deliverable. We're working with KNHS and other organizations to assist with the implementation of this funding over the next, like I said, 5 years. That's what this is going to assist with. The lead program has been significantly successful in the sense of getting the word out and making an impact. The new initiative will start December 1st. We pretty much just working out the agreement last week with HUD, and we'll be able to start moving in that process to continue that program over the next 5 years. In the case of next item of grant financing, affordable units, that $1 million is to assist us with multi-unit development in the city. Perfect. Harrison Circle development, Creamy development. Pretty much we have gap financing needs right at this $1 million, so we're going to have to make adjustments to see if we may end up splitting this to maybe $500,000 to assist some of these big major projects. We got a handful of them coming to fruition soon. These are affordable housing development projects, LIHTC projects, low-income tax credit projects. They're going to be helpful in creating the affordable housing development that we so significantly need in the community. This funding will work in that direction to assist with that gap financing that they need, and hopefully leverage other dollars to assist in those development projects. And of course, those projects will come forth in front of this commission. You'll see the breakdown of the performance and numbers of how our funding is assisting in those projects, but this will be part of it. All right. And then the $3 million housing programming, that's going to assist in our programming we're working with the funding of hopefully, in this case, around 58 units of affordable housing in the city. It'll be split up with single-family housing, hopefully some mod pod development as well, some additional low-income, maybe mixed-use type of smaller housing, and then hopefully some other creative affordable housing initiatives. But the goal is at least 58 units tapping into this. Overall, we're looking at trying to get up to 128 units from the funding that we have with this and other dollars. As they say, that's on pretty much our properties and working with our nonprofits for development here in the city. And that's what that initiative is for. And that's it with housing. Questions? And I do have staff here for the details, so.
I guess I'm just going to stop at this point. This is not necessarily for you, although it may be including you, and thank you, Mr. Mitchell. But I want to back up just a little bit here, Jim, just to talk about the process. I assume that as these items rose to the top, that there were other programs that maybe a whole variety of departments were thinking about funding or asking for funding for. And so briefly, what did that process look like internally to the city to get to, well, these are the recommendations, even though there may have been more, say, in housing or any other category?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and perhaps that should have been clarified up front. But so we solicited requests from our department heads around the projects and programs related to the priority areas in Imagine Kalamazoo. And those were scored by an internal team, cross-departmental. And the higher the score, the more likely it's here on the list. And included in the scoring are across the priorities, how is there a good fit between the request and the priorities, and then some of the other dimensions like, population served and those kind of elements of a project. And so the ones represented here are the ones that rose to the top. There were other projects or requests that were not funded, and those will remain there. And, as funding becomes available, we can certainly revisit those. I also just want to draw your attention to, there's a highlighted column, it's the proposed 2023 budget. So that's going to really be our focus tonight, but there are also 2024, 2025, and 2026. And those are more projections. It says anticipated there. So that's just for planning purposes. So what you see before you tonight is total counting of the 38-some million dollars. So, and a lot across these programs in those years. So I just wanted to point that out as well.
Thank you, Manager Smith. So then just back to you on the economic development, Mr. Mitchell, and the housing side here. I know that there is more need in any given year or time period than what we can fund. So I'm presuming that being part of this and thinking about this, you're comfortable with what rose to the top here in terms of the allocation and our capacity to execute on it and have good results, even though there may have been some additional things you were hoping we could do. I mean, what are your kind of general thoughts about that?
Yeah, the simple answer is yes. The flexibility that we're blessed with, the city and city staff, is that this is that one-time offer of dollars that we're going to be able to access. Mm-hmm. But our blessing is that we have other funding we can go after to assist us on some of these initiatives, which is FFE. So this is a good shot in the arm for us to leverage these dollars to do some of the things that we want to make sure happen over the next couple of years. But we do plan on asking for additional money, and Stevie V can contest to that. I will ask for money over and over again. So I will, and our department will go after additional dollars to assist to close these gaps as much as possible. but this will be sufficient towards what we need to do with these dollars for right now. But we do plan on asking for additional dollars on the other side to hopefully close the gap to reach our goals and objectives. And like I've talked to the commission, we as staff want to see what your goals and objectives for affordable housing, what's that number? So that will assist us with better analyzing what dollars we need to have to hit that goal. And that will make it a lot easier for us in our planning, and also not planning for funding, but also site and land planning in the city on where best to have those developments at as well, and what that infrastructure costs will, where Director Baker is going to be talking about next. What does that mean as well? Because housing development and this commercial development is great, but there is additional costs beyond just building the house or building the building that we have to take in consideration, and that's also with that gap financing that we're trying to assist, especially with affordable housing. So that's where other dollars will come in from, even the Brownfield Authority, to assist us with those type of development projects. So yes, this is sufficient for what we're trying to do, but of course we always want more because we're trying to have the most impact as possible.
I appreciate that very much. Commissioner Juarez.
Yeah, let's say if we didn't have ARPA dollars, would these things still be a priority?
The answer is they will be a priority, but the funding would be, like I said, going towards FFE, and would be probably a little smaller, stretched out budget for implementation. So this is an additional shot in the arm to quote unquote stretch our dollars a little bit more towards the long-term goal.
And, you know, I just wondering because of looking at that, you know, if this was in our, like, these programs were in our general budget before ARPA came and before we had the pandemic, these things were looked at and worked on in a sense, and there was money for that. And I think our job up here is to figure out, is ARPA money, using that ARPA money for these things that already we can find funding for, maybe in places we've done before, and maybe we have, you know, opportunities there and still have opportunities there. Is this, you know, a good request for ARPA funding? You know, because you say it's a one-time funding and it's not going to come back. It's only going to be one time. Are we getting the biggest bang for our buck? And is this where we need to spend ARPA money at? That's my biggest concern. Mm-hmm. Is this where we need to spend ARPA money at? Not if we want to, mm-hmm. right? Because a lot of times our goals shouldn't be articulated by what we want. They should be articulated by what's happening in our community, right? And at the end of the day, do we need to do this, right? And so I think that's the bigger question for me. But I appreciate all the work that's gone into this, no doubt.
Any other questions for
Just
Director? Yeah, Commissioner Hess?
okay. So lead support, going back to lead support, is that lead remediation inside the homes?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
it is.
And I think the numbers are so much more per need than the
Yes.
300,000. Okay. Hopefully we find other dollars to support that as well.
Yes, we are leveraging other dollars as well.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Any other questions? All right, Manager Ritzma.
All right. I'll be passing this on to Director Baker.
All right.
Thank you, Director Mitchell. Good evening, Your Honor, City Commissioner, City Manager, City Attorney. We're going to talk about infrastructure now. We've got a number of projects listed up here. We're going to highlight and talk about just a few of them. Stormwater assessment, a project that was awarded already in 2022. Some proposed stormwater catch basin and pipelining, some rehabilitation work. And then also talk about Fraternity Village Drive, a street lighting project. Want to talk a little bit about the stormwater condition assessment work that is actually happening right now. That was a project awarded by the City Commission on May 16th of 2022 this year. We awarded a contract to an engineering firm to go out and survey and perform condition assessments risk analysis, and criticality and failure analysis of 3,900 manholes associated with the stormwater system and their connected pipes. So really what we're talking about is going out to these 3,900 manhole structures on our stormwater system, taking a camera, usually mounted on a pole, like a long 10-foot pole, putting that camera down and videotaping the condition of the inside of the manhole, and then turning on a bright light and looking up the pipe, both sides, and looking for failure indicators, things like cracks and fractures and things of that nature. That work will be reported to us. We're going to finalize that on December 1st, and then we'll have a report moving forward that will help us prioritize where work would occur within the stormwater system. We're also, at that time, going to update our GIS system and provide any indications of things that we found out in the field, things like pipe sizes or pipe connectivity or something like that, that's already reflected in our GIS but needs to be updated. That work will help us prioritize our proposed stormwater catch basin, manhole, and pipelining. There's rehabilitation techniques where we can use trenchless technology. That's technology that does not involve us ripping up, open cut excavating the roadway. So we can perform cast in place pipe lining. So that's like a fiberglass liner that goes inside the pipe and cures. It kind of creates a pipe inside a pipe. So that can be used to prolong the life of clay pipes and concrete pipes. And we can obtain another 50 years of life cycle out of that pipe without having to dig up this roadway. A similar technique's used in the manholes. We often use a monoform technique that a lot of these manholes are brick cast manholes. And so what we can do is open the manhole up, put form liners in the manhole, and then pour concrete between that form liner and that annual space of that existing brick manhole. And then it kind of pours a new manhole inside the manhole, and that allows for an additional 50 years of life cycle out of that. Another project we want to talk about is our Fraternity Village Drive proposed street lighting project. This proposed project would coordinate with a local street project where we're looking to implement sidewalk, pedestrian, and some traffic calming improvements on Fraternity Village Drive. We'd also like to brighten the area up through a design with Consumers Energy to bring in a new lighting standard for streetlights. And streetlights is one of those programs that we've done a lot of work here in Kalamazoo. One of the areas that is perhaps most visible is Stadium Drive. When we took ownership of Stadium Drive from MDOT, we did a project to increase the street lighting brightness, and that really is all based in safety. New modern design standards for streetlights have certain requirements that we'd like to meet, and as we work through our system through attrition, we'd like to convert over from the old kind of orange glow streetlights to the modern new LED, and then we're also looking at where the streetlights are placed. So previously, going back 50 or so years, we did what's called spotting, where we'd spot or place a streetlight at intersections and then roughly at mid-block. But we did not study the photometrics. We did not study how that light interacted with driving and pedestrians and how that light was used to light up the roadway from a safety feature. So we now have lighting standards that we use from a design template. We look at lighting intensity at intersections, at crosswalks, and then broad lighting intensity across the entire roadway surface. And so that's where we're looking to move forward with new lighting design standards. I'll pause there at that point and see if there's any questions from commissioners on any of the infrastructure-related projects.
Questions, commissioners? Commissioner Bradle? No? Okay.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Boyson for safety.
Thank you, Director Baker.
Thank you.
Director Baker, you missed the neighborhood tree planting and maintenance.
Oh, sure, I can talk about that.
Okay.
Certainly, that's a project that we show up here, about $500,000 annually. That's two components. One of those is the planting new trees. We'd like to plant about 300 new trees per year. Another component of that is just keeping up with the maintenance, the trimming, and the hazardous trees. And certainly with our tree canopy and the age of our tree infrastructure in the city, we want to make sure that we're keeping up with the trimming as well as the new plantings. And again, this is a program that is really beneficial, but our current funding mechanisms present some challenges in us maintaining these levels of investment. So we're really excited for this opportunity. Thank you.
Appreciate it. I'll just, since you came back up here, I will just, as a reminder for everyone, just ask you a question here. You know, we've talked a lot about wastewater and sewers and water and that sort of thing over the last few months here. But just as a reminder, our water and sewer budget and that separate enterprise fund that we, did a rate increase does not pay for stormwater work. Isn't that correct?
That's correct. So at this time, City of Kalamazoo does not have a stormwater utility in that there's no dedicated funding source for stormwater. Anything for stormwater from a funding standpoint, really comes from major and local streets. That is a bit of a challenge. I think, we recognize that community members want to see investments in streets, primarily on things that enhance the driving experience, things like new pavement, street lights, that sort of thing. And when we do a lot of investment in stormwater, that can really chew up the funds really fast. Stormwater is expensive, especially when we're digging these holes. And so there really needs to be some additional funding sources, and we're really excited to have this opportunity because otherwise we're looking at competition with general fund or major local streets because there is not a stormwater utility. So thank you.
Yeah, appreciate that.
All right, good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, City Manager, City Attorney, and Clerk Boiling. And thank you, Director Baker. I was asked to update the Commission on just a couple things. And we'll start with community safety, which kind of ties into our Bridging Opportunities, which was our youth initiative that we started really in 2016, but we've been able to expand in 2022. When we talk about violence, I think it's important to note that really our community-based strategies, our balanced approach between outreach and enforcement working together, these strategies are working. If you see the slide here, we're talking about gun violence responses in this year, and you see we've had a significant reduction in gun violence since the summer, and our levels in October and November were below that of January, February, and March, where are typically our slowest time, so we're trending in a very, very positive direction. Violent crime overall is down 11%, assaults with firearms is down 14% over this time last year, and motor vehicle theft is down 33%. So just some great work going on in partnership with the community. We know that community-based strategies, such as our group violence intervention, are working. Another important piece of that is our Bridging Opportunities, which really focuses on our youth. We know that we need to focus our resources on a small number of youth who are most at risk and really need additional support to ensure their success. So that's why we started Bridging Opportunities in 2016. Initially, that has always been a summer program, but thanks to City Commission support and the ARPA dollars, we were able to carry that on year-round. So those kids are still in bridging now, even during the school year, which I think is going to be a big benefit to them. Our community partners in this, our main community partners is the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Kalamazoo. That's where the youth do their programming. They're actually paid as youth development staff, junior staff at the Boys and Girls Club, so they get work experience. They're able to gain a little self-confidence and a sense of identity working for the Boys and Girls Club. And they also gain employment experience, different career opportunities, and they get a chance to receive their CPR first aid certification. They cover their first part one of driver's training. We know a lot of youth don't have a barrier as far as getting paid or money to attend driver's training. So this strategy helps to provide that for them. And really the big piece of it that we've seen over and over again is really that lasting partnership, the mentorship, the role models, and friendships they make at the Boys and Girls Club with the staff. The staff does a phenomenal job there, And we know, again, that if we can focus those type of resources on a small number of these youth, that we see dramatic improvements. So we're looking forward to continue that. Any questions on bridging before I move on?
Yeah, Vice Mayor Cooney.
Dave, I just asked it, what age are these? young people?
Thank you, sir. It's 14 to 16 is who we are
14 to
have it
16.
in this year. Yep.
And how many do we have it?
We have 8 youth that are engaged in the year-round program. So again, we have to keep it small because it's very intensive with the work that they do, and we can't have too big of a group. So we have 8, and we're hoping to expand that, especially as in the future as the Boys and Girls Clubs move into their new capacity.
Okay, great, thank you.
Else? Okay. I'll talk about our downtown substation.
Commissioner Hoffman has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Thank you so much. I was just wondering, how are these particular 8 youth, how were they selected?
Yes, we work bridging opportunities in partnership with the courts. So these youth are on probation. We work with Judge Bell is a big advocate, and so we work with Judge Bell and the probation officers to identify and select those who we think would most benefit with this program. Okay. Okay, downtown substation. One of the things that we're trying to be very intentional about is having an increased presence in downtown so that people who live, work, and visit downtown feel safe. Again, I said this is very intentional to increase our presence downtown. What I have on the screen right here is a report that is generated daily. This is our downtown call report, so I look at this every day. This one I have on the screen is from Sunday, so it's a fairly slow day, but we can look at 2 types of calls: the dispatch calls that we received, the calls that we responded to in a reactive way, and then also proactive officer-initiated calls. So I like to make sure that we're not just responding to calls, but we're also doing things such as foot patrols, directed patrols. We're being visible, and we track that through this. So that's very reassuring to know that my staff is doing what we ask them to do, which is be out and be visible. The other piece of this is if you look at the reactive calls, the dispatch calls, we can see that most of them are trespassing, alarms, more nuisance type activities. And we can use our new community service team, our CST team, along with our social service coordinator, to look at these individuals who are causing repeat calls for service and see if there are community resources that we can leverage to help these individuals to find long-term solutions to their issues. We know that just arresting these individuals for nuisance crimes and putting them in jail and they get right back out isn't a long-term fix, it's a temporary fix. We need to find long-term things, and that's where our community service team and social service advocate really work to really identify things that we can do long-term to help these individuals. So hopefully those efforts are starting to pay off, and we'll see reduced calls for service, especially repeat type calls downtown. But one of the pieces that we're missing in this is really that presence downtown. We used to have a substation downtown, as most of you know. Station 1 was at Exchange Place, and we left there in June of 2017, and we have not had a presence downtown since then. So it was right on Farmers Alley, right at the corner. It was kind of tucked out of the way, but at least we were close to that mall. So what we're looking for right now is to lease a space at 248 North Mall. So it's right at the North Mall, which we believe is an ideal location for our officers to have some presence. In that, we wouldn't have a full station out of that, but we, as far as a 24-hour station with all of our Zone 1 personnel like we had before, is what we're looking at is to house our community policing team and our community service team and our social service coordinator out of that location. Again, we think that North Mall is where a lot of the service and needs for those type of activities are, so it'd be a good fit. Again, we have community policing officers that would be responsible for the whole city, but we also have downtown community policing officers that would work out of that station along with our community service team and social service coordinator. So you'd see a lot more presence downtown, police cars coming and going, and just we'd be more accessible to the public. If they wanted to stop in the station, we could use that location for community meetings and problem-solving sessions. So we really feel that by this would be a good fit for not only the visitors and businesses, but we're seeing increased residency downtown, especially in the North Mall area and these condos that people living downtown. So we just need to increase our presence down there, and this would be a good solution for that. So any questions on the substation proposed? Okay. I'll talk about the next proposal that we're bringing forward for this coming year and into 2025 is our KDPS retention bonus. We have struggled really in the last several years, like a lot of other agencies, to find and hire and retain sworn personnel. This greatly impacts our ability to provide police, fire, and EMS services to our community because we have to staff the streets. So some of these other things, like I talked about, the community service team and some of these other things, we really need the bodies to carry out those functions. As we have seen in recent years, as this trend continues, you can see here, these are normal applicants that we've seen since 2017 to 2022, and the number is continually declining. So just last year, we had only 338 total applicants, and we used to have well over 1,000. And not only are we having less applicants, but the applicants that we have now, many don't have prior police or fire experience, and they haven't been through a police or fire academy. So back before, most of those individuals would have prior police or fire experience, work for a small agency, and come to us as a career department. So we're not seeing that now. We're seeing people that we have to train from day one and put them through the police and fire academy. So currently, as we sit right now, we have 29 vacancies for sworn officer positions. We're struggling to fill those. Our average hiring class is about 13 officers per year. So at this rate, based on normal retirements and employee departures, and if this trend continues, we anticipate having 43 vacancies by the end of 2024. So every year we're digging a little bit deeper hole for ourselves, which is not sustainable if we want to continue to provide police, fire, and EMS services at this level. So we're trying to do a couple of different things here to hire and retain staff. And you see, not only is the applicant pool shrinking, but our calls for service continue to go up. So our workload for our staff is increasing. So we responded to over 120,000 calls for service in 2021. So what can we do to get more folks in the door and keep them here? So one of the things that we have proposed is a lateral transfer incentive. So how can we hire officers that have some prior experience, been through a police academy or a fire academy? How can we lure them to come to work for Kalamazoo Public Safety? Because we know if you've already been police or fire, you know what you're getting into, you know the work. And chances are if we get those officers to come, they're going to stay. Conversely, some of these other officers I talked about that have never been police, fire, never been trained, they don't really necessarily know for sure what they're getting into till they're here, and after several years we lose some of those officers. They decide it's not for them, they want to pursue a different career, maybe work for another agency where they just have to do police. You know, that's another thing. We do police, fire, and EMS, so it's a complicated job. They have 3 roles. Some of them say, well, we could go work somewhere else and just do one job, and it's easier. So what can we do to keep those folks here? Because it's a significant investment. So when we hire someone, if we have to put them through the police academy and or fire academy, it's about $25,000 for that cost. But if you look at what it takes us over a year to train someone, so during that training period with their training and education and work, you know, that's about a $90,000 per employee investment that we're losing those, and how can we keep them here? So we'll start with the laterals. Again, like I said, just the academy costs about $25,000. So if we could hire them in, the city saves that cost. We don't have to put them through the police fire academy. They've already done. Again, that's a saving. So we're proposing that if we hire someone that's prior police, fire at a full-time department and they meet the minimum qualifications, that they would receive a $10,000 lateral transfer bonus. And then if they complete their probation after 1 year, they would receive an additional $5,000. So it'd be $15,000 total cost of the city. But again, we're saving that $25,000 initial investment to put them through the police academy. And again, from what we've seen recently, some of our lateral transfer officers that we've hired are some of our best officers. And the other reason why we're not attracting as many laterals as what we had hoped is because many of these officers are transferring from a department where they're at the top of the pay scale. So they decide to leave their home department and come work for Kalamazoo Public Safety. They're not going to start at the top of our pay scale, so they'll take usually a reduction in pay. And many officers can't afford that initial reduction in pay, so we're hoping that $10,000 initial bonus would entice them to come and be able to absorb that financially for them and their families to come work for KDPS. So we really think that that would be a big help getting good qualified officers in the door here. The other piece of that is what do we do to keep the men and women who are coming to work every day and working hard for this community. It's a difficult job. And the officers at KDPS have worked very hard, and it's been a tough couple of years. What can we do to keep them here? And again, on average, we're losing about 8 officers a year through either they go and leave another department or they decide that law enforcement isn't for them and they get out of it altogether. And that's a significant investment. Again, if we say it's about a $90,000 investment to get them trained, if we lose on average 8 officers a year, that's a $720,000 lost investment that the city absorbs when that happens. So what can we do to keep them here? So one of the things we're proposing is that retention bonus for current employees who are off probation. So that would be a $1,000 bonus in the first quarter of 2023. So all sworn officers would get a $1,000 bonus at the beginning, first quarter of next year. And if they stay and they work for that entire year, in the first quarter of 2024, they would get a 3 to 5% bonus. And again, if they work all through 2024, they would get a 3 to 5% bonus in 2025. And this is only a pilot program, so this would only go to 2025 and not beyond that. But we really think that's fair to our employees who have worked here. And then also, if you look at wages, we negotiated a contract with the unions in 2022. That was prior to the massive inflation that we've all seen. And again, when officers are looking at pay rates, we're comparable to other jurisdictions, but if they can go to another agency and just do one job, not 3, what can we do to keep them here and really reward them for, again, being here and working hard every day for this community. So we really feel that the retention bonus and the lateral transfer bonuses, along with other efforts with recruiting and hiring that are currently underway and some other things that we're looking into, are going to help us stabilize our staffing so that we can continue to provide the high level of service of police, fire, and EMS that we currently provide to the city. Well, thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Bryson, questions?
Would you guys hire me?
I would hire you, but I definitely would take you out to breakfast. Is that?
Other questions?
Maybe lunch.
Yeah, Commissioner Prado.
Hey, Chief Boysen, thanks for the presentation. This is a lot of really valuable information. I wish we could do this again at a business meeting as well, because I know more people are paying attention and whatnot, but this is really helpful information. How do we compare to other jurisdictions in the area or nationwide in terms of that decrease in applicants and then our vacancies? Is that pretty, and I know you're not going to have a precise number per se, but just generally speaking, what are you seeing nationwide? What are you seeing around the region?
Yeah, nationwide, we're seeing really the same thing in law enforcement in general. It's and really across the board in many sectors. People are struggling to find staff, but particularly in law enforcement. So one of the things that we looked at when we put this proposal together is what are other cities doing to entice officers to come work for them. And so we actually looked at comparables from throughout the country for retention and hiring bonuses, and we're kind of really in line in the median of what many cities are asking for. Again, this is something that we need to do, because if we're not doing it, other departments are, and we're going to continue to lose folks. That's my biggest fear, is we're going to lose our staff that we have, especially if local jurisdictions, others start doing the same incentive.
Really also just appreciate, I'm trying to find where the slide was that I wrote this note, so I apologize, patience with me, but it was on the downtown call responses, and one of the things I appreciated is you mentioning about the proactive response versus the reactive response, and how the desire to be more on that side of the proactive response to things. Also really appreciated about your care and attention to just providing as much wraparound support for individuals who might be repeat individuals who are maybe struggling with something or have some underlying issues that we can support them with community resources. So wanted to thank you for that as well. My other question was as well, for the substation that's coming in as well. I know that's on our regular agenda tonight. Can you repeat again? You said that it would be the community policing unit And the social services coordinator, you said that would be housed out of that space there?
Yes, in our community service team, which is a sergeant and one officer assigned to that team, and they work closely with our social services coordinator.
Okay. And then you also, in the beginning, you had shared some statistics about some of the trends that we're seeing with different types of crime, and you'd mentioned, I think you'd mentioned that the vehicular theft was down
33%.
And what were the other two statistics again? I missed.
Violent crime is down 11%, and assaults with firearm is down 14%. Homicides were down 38% from the previous year, which is part of that overall number for our violent crime. That's part of that 11%. But in particular, if you just pull out homicides, we're down. So we're trending in the right direction. I'm honestly very optimistic and hope that we'll start to see pre-2020 pandemic numbers again here as we move forward into 2022 and beyond.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Thank you. What do you believe is contributing to the decrease in the gun violence right now?
Well, it's one of those things, a lot of people ask it, and I wish there was one thing you could point to, because then everyone would do it, right? But it's many things working together. But the heart of it, the heart of the strategy we do at KDPS is that balanced approach with outreach and enforcement, where we're working with the community and collaborating with the community, and we're coordinating our efforts. It can't just be enforcement, and it can't just be outreach, but when those two things work together, I think that approach is what is bearing fruit now, where we are identifying those individuals who are most at risk, and we either go at them with interventions and mediations, or if we have to protect the community and arrest them and get them off the street, that's what we're going to do. But it's those direct interventions working with the community, I think, is starting to pay off.
Good question. Thank you. Commissioner Hess.
Chief Boyson, I do hope that your staff and your officers know how much we support them, and how, with every interaction, I'm grateful for their service. You have here on one of the training center planning study. Could you go over that just a bit and let us know what that 100,000 is for?
Yep, thanks, Commissioner. Thanks for those comments also. So the training centers, we are looking to get some initial studies done on what it would cost to put a new indoor range. Our range that we are currently using for our gun range is very, very old. I think most of the parts were built or made in the 1980s, so we're having a hard time keeping that range up and running. Those parts, they don't manufacture them anymore, so they have to cobble them together, and it's very expensive to maintain. So we're really looking to build a new range in our Nazareth complex training facility, as well as a driving track, because we know that there's a lot of high risk and liability to cities with driving and pursuit driving and responding to emergency calls. So we really need capacity to build a track and a gun range, and so that's that initial investment. We're looking at the planning to hopefully move that forward in the future.
Thank you. I'll just note that I was made well before the 80s, and I'm still fine. No,
Me too.
but I understand the need for a new gun range. Thank
Harder
you.
to maintain.
Thanks again. Manager Rissman.
All right, we'll move on now to youth, and we'll have our Parks and Recreation Director, Patrick McVeary, come forward. Thank you, Chief Boyson.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. I am going to speak on the youth strategy items in the proposed budget. The first one that you'll see is the allocation for youth programming. This is the Police Athletic League and the staffing for that. It is lower than last year's ask due to the opportunity that we had to take advantage of the money that we had this year and purchase equipment that was needed for Rocket football. That equipment wasn't available initially during the summer, so we decided to actually put RFPs out this fall, and we anticipate having that equipment available for next summer and actually delivered this spring. So that was part of the reasoning for the lower budget amount for the PAL program. We'll still be able to actually operate all the programs that we did this year. I'm sure there'll be more. There's a new program that we're working on right now for this winter and leading into spring. But just to highlight some of the numbers of the PAL program over the last year, we reached a total of 594 youth and adults with all of the programs that were offered from PAL. In the men's Midnight League, that was comprised of 90 men that played in that program. And then so we reached a total of 504 youth across all of the programs, being basketball, which was comprised of the Junior Midnight League, the 3-on-3 event that Public Safety partners with our department on here at Bronson Park. The Football League, we had a total of 274 players in the Rocket Football League this year, along with 80 cheerleaders. I believe that was a number that was higher than in the past. And then the soccer league that we partnered with El Concilio, we had 70 players in that as well. So the PAL program had a great first year. There were some bumps in the road, but those are expected just because of some of the programs and the fast nature that we actually implemented those. But the $275,000 request for next year will comprise of all the PAL programming, as well as the temporary staff that we utilize to help with the Rocket Football program, the basketball events, and then the Midnight Leagues as well. And it's also inclusive of our youth program advocate position that helps run that program. The next item was the allocation for youth programming. And you'll see there's kind of a placeholder here of $3.5 million over the next 3 years. And it'll also, I'm going to highlight this past summer's $1 million project that we partnered with KidNet on. Basically, I know everyone is eagerly anticipating the final report from KidNet that was actually emailed this past weekend to city staff. I actually was able to take a look at it briefly this morning. And what the plan is working with Meg from KidNet, what we're going to do is reconvene a meeting of the commissioners that were on the youth subcommittee and city staff probably the week after Thanksgiving holiday is over with, to kind of dive into that report, go over it, listen to Meg's comments and suggestions, and then kind of develop a framework moving forward. But how that also kind of incorporates into this youth initiatives fund and the placeholder for that money, is that it will be kind of some further work needed, not only from the members of the commission that are on the, but also the commission as a whole, as far as the priorities based on youth strategy and how that money will actually be utilized over the next years. We've taken in some feedback and heard a lot of interest in early childhood education, obviously continuing to support the out-of-school time activities, and then also working with our youth that require intense one-on-one supports to address barriers to reaching their full potential. So those are the two main focuses on the youth strategy right there. And one thing I was able to notice in looking over the KidNet report that kind of stuck out in my mind was, and I don't want to steal any of Meg's thunder, but from the summer programming that she was able to initiate with all of the members of the community, their report highlighted that they were able to reach almost 3,400 youth in all the organizations that were able to be funded over this past summer. And I'm sure we'll get into more of that once we talk with Meg and go through the final report.
Vice Mayor Cooney, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, you said early childhood education, and what was the other thing you said?
We've heard interest on early childhood education, continuing support of the out-of-school time activities, and then the intense one-on-one supports to address barriers for kids to be able to reach their full potential.
Okay, that's sort of what we're talking about with the schools.
Correct, yes, absolutely.
It seems like a low figure for all that.
As far as
That's going to cost a lot more money than what we
Yeah.
got down here.
Yeah.
Okay, good, thank you.
Any other questions?
Questions, team? Commissioner Pradel.
I could just make a comment. I used to have a scout leader over here at First Presbyterian Church when I was a Boy Scout over here, and he used to have a phrase that he swells with pride, when he would see something or hear something. And, my heart is swelling with pride, just hearing those numbers and the youth that were impacted this summer. And, certainly you can't know, how that translates or precipitates, this year in terms of outcomes for our community, or, for generations to come, but I have to believe that that was at least a positive interaction with all those youth this summer.
Yeah.
And I hope we continue to keep our foot on the gas for those young people in our community. So.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Vice Mayor?
I just want to echo that. I think this is great, and the numbers are wonderful. And I did have a lot of time to see about the basketball program, and that involved families, as well as the players, and the families coming over there was just great.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Yeah, I feel kind of bad personally because I wasn't able to read the full report this morning in preparing for this and some other stuff, but I'm looking forward to actually being able to look into that and then also talk with Meg and
Thank you, sir.
thanks.
All right. We're going to switch gears here a little bit and ask our CFO, Steve Asensi, and our Assistant City Manager, Rebecca Kick, to come forward and talk about revenue replacement.
All right, good evening, Commissioners. So first I want to start off with the revenue replacement. This was one of the original core factors of the federal government in creating the ARPA fund, that was to stabilize local governments and protect them from the losses that occurred due to COVID. And so here at the city, we don't have a sales tax, so our general fund was much less affected than other cities. But what we did see these impacts were in our local streets funds. People were staying at home, no one was driving, gas taxes were low. So we followed the federal formula that they set up and calculated out what that revenue replacement would look like. And if any of you remember, this number going forward from 2023 forward is a little bit lower than what it used to be. And that's largely because we redo this calculation every year. And the street funds have seen a boost to their income, but not quite enough to overcome what the federal government projected that it should be at had COVID never happened. And then the second part of that here is also equally affected, or more affected, would be our parking system. Again, with everyone staying home, people were not paying for parking spots, people were not renewing their monthly leases on their parking spot, they were not coming downtown day to day to pay for the meter or into the ramps. And so again, we followed that federal formula, calculated back, and kind of came up with the numbers that you see here. And so, what we look at in 2023 is the number of replacing revenue that was lost during 2021 per the federal formula. And so we're still catching up, and some of these funds are going to continue to support the parking system's general operations and also help us move forward with a consultant to oversee the parking fund and implement a new strategy to help make the parking fund more profitable as we go forward into the future. Do you want to add anything further?
No, I'll just, if anybody has any questions about the parking, then I can.
Questions, team? No, thank you, Steve.
All right. Any other questions about revenue replacement?
I just want to make a quick comment here, Steve, just to reflect on what you said and the idea that a portion of this obviously was intended to be that revenue replacement, and participating in a smaller group of Michigan cities, which is called urban core mayors, that get together on a regular basis. It was certainly the case that cities in particular, and I think there's 22 of them in Michigan, that did have income tax, saw the greatest revenue reduction over the time of the pandemic. And in some cases, a much, much larger percentage of these dollars went to fill that gap, because that was a significant decrease in general fund revenue, which is where that income tax revenue goes. So it's just interesting seeing that. In some cases, the total dollar amount of the ARPA allocation was not far off from the actual reduction in revenue that was experienced by those cities. So it's interesting for us, luckily, I guess, in this case, that it was not a revenue reduction we experienced. And so there's more discrete areas where you can identify that happened. So just kind of a broader context for that.
Yep, exactly. All right, then continuing on here, our next section here is good governance. So stepping into our good governance, the largest portion here being our admin costs. So what we've done here is we've used the federal de minimis 10% administrative cost for funds that would go back to the general fund. And what that really is made up of is direct and indirect costs of staff time and equipment and supplies that are not included in these programs that are presented. So of all the programs that you've seen tonight, there are no city staff hours or dollars accounting towards those programs. Because alternatively, we could have staff tracking every minute of every day on what they do on ARPA, and then charging that directly back to the ARPA fund. We've opted for the easier route to present, 10% that will cover both direct and indirect costs of all the time and effort that goes into, planning and doing these programs that have been brought to you. And then the oversight that would even be involved with subrecipients that would give additional funds to run programs for us, because those programs in themselves require a significant amount of oversight, both from our consultant iParametrics and our city staff that work here every day. I guess I'll open that up for questions if there's any on that item before I move on.
Don't see any. Thank you.
Okay. And then I'll cover one other item here, which is the election equipment. We've allocated $150,000 towards additional election equipment to help with the safety and transport of our election equipment. It's through the clerk's office, and obviously, as we all know, elections are extremely important to what we do here every year. And then finally, we have our Imagine Kalamazoo engagement and outreach. This funding is going to go towards improving our outreach to the community to help plan our future vision statements and master plans, and so that's where that money will go. And we have Director Kick available, or ACM Kick available, if we have any questions on that funding.
Questions for Assistant City Manager Kick? Commissioner Pradel?
Yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more about like what those funds would be primarily directed towards. It's exciting that we're going to be doing that work again very soon.
Oh, I know. So, thanks, Commissioner Pradel. So we have always been supporting our ongoing work with neighborhood plans. So we'll continue to build capacity in the coalitions to continue our neighborhood plan work, as well as we do outreach for every project in every neighborhood that is also going on. You can always follow that on imaginekalamazoo.com. We have a projects page, so you can always see when those meetings are, how to get engaged. Typically, we will repeat the meeting online as well. So if you can't attend the meeting, then we always have all of the presentations, surveys, maps that you can comment on, which will also be repeated online. Additionally, we are supporting outreach this year for residential zoning updates, which will include a barriers to housing study, which we are looking to do at the beginning of the year. And then there's the ramp up to Imagine Kalamazoo 2035, which is going to happen in the fourth quarter of this year.
Cool, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, AC Kick.
Yeah, any other questions on good governance?
I guess not, Steve. Thank you.
All right, well, I'm going to actually pass it off here to Director McVeary again to come discuss our multiple section, because this is mostly his project moving forward.
Thank you, sir. Back up again. So I know you all probably have a lot of questions regarding the market event building at the farmers market. And this allocation of funding over the next 3 years, Director Vicenzi put in there. Basically, when the market event building began back in 2016, it initially only had one purpose: to serve the market, during the year, and then possibly any type of winter markets. The process kind of evolved, and both our department and I think the city as a whole kind of thought outside of the box on how this second phase of this project could benefit not only the farmers market, but a lot more. And so what it's kind of developed into is the market event building mainly will be used as a new after-school site and summer camp site to replace the aging youth development center that we have. There's a few issues with that building. We actually had to kind of do a little emergency roof repair this past summer to be able to house the summer camp there throughout the summer at the Youth Development Center. But one of the main purposes of this building will be housing the after-school program there throughout the school year, and then also serve as a summer camp site during the summer. Along with that, the new building is going to be built, it's almost 6,000 square feet from the designs that we've seen so far. It will incorporate a small kitchen that can be used for demonstrations and class-type instruction. And the space, not only serving the after-school programs and the summer camp, will be able to use for meetings or possible community events. The farmers market actually would be possibly able to utilize the building during the winter time for winter markets. I know that's been a thing that they haven't been able to take advantage of over the last few years. Incorporated into the design will also be a playground that was developed back in 2016. So that'll be a new addition to both the site and that building, along with an outdoor space. There'll be a dedicated food truck area, which I know this past summer, with the way that the market ran and part of the project not being completed, that was kind of an issue. There'll be dedicated food truck space for the patrons to be actually able to access the food trucks better. There'll also be dedicated power for those food trucks as well. They're currently operating off of a temporary system that we have in place. And I know there's been questions about additional grant-type funding for the project, and we have solicited that. The Irving S. Gilmore Foundation actually granted $1 million to us for the second phase of the project. We, both our department and Carrie Lynn Williams, the grant specialist for the city, put in for a DNR trust fund grant. We'll actually find out about that towards the end of next month. And then we were also part of a regional application for an MEDC grant. And we've been told that we have been awarded, but the final amount has yet to be determined. So that's another funding source that will be coming in for the marketing event building. As far as total budget, initially when the project scope began, I believe in 2020, the estimate was around $6 million. And we're actually working with our consultant right now. They're completing the updated cost estimate this month, and we'll have that available at the end of November. We had to use that as part of the grant work that we were doing. Any questions that I can answer?
Thank you. Questions, Commissioners? Commissioner Hoffman?
Thank you. You knew
You're
I was
welcome.
coming. So this sounds like it could be a lovely, lovely place.
Yeah.
But I would be remiss if I did not talk about our need for temporary sheltering for our homeless individuals within our community. And when I see $3 million for a multi-purpose building, I have to take a deep breath and pause. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Mm-hmm.
One of my questions is, what funding for this would be coming from FFE, if any?
For the second phase of the project, I don't believe there's any FFE funding. That was just for phase one.
Okay,
complete.
could that be a possibility?
I believe so, but I'm not 100% sure. I know we've passed the ask
Okay.
for this coming year. And this, I believe, we weren't expecting to begin construction and start all in '23. It's kind of been a planning process based on not having the actual estimated costs because of supply chain issues and everything else, so.
Okay. And then my second question is in reference to the after-school, and what would that look like if we partnered with KPS or KRESA to do after-school activities versus a new building right now or within the next 3 years?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Vice Mayor, if you're going to say
Yeah, I mean, we're building a whole new school at Edison. And it's long, it's big, it's beautiful. Not housing after-school programs there, partnering with other people to put after-school programs there. And in some of the other schools that we have, those buildings are paid for. We got them, they're in key spots. I really think we got to look at that.
Commissioner Hoffman? No? Okay.
No,
Any other questions? Thoughts? All right, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Manager Risma.
Yeah, we'll have our CFO, Steve Asensi, come forward again to wrap things up.
Okay, oop, I went the wrong way. There we go. And then here on this slide, you just kind of see the breakdown of everything that we've presented tonight. This is the breakdown given the full amount through the end of 2026 of what this proposed ARPA plan would be, with the majority of the funding at 21% going towards housing, followed by youth, and then we have revenue replacement, good governance, safety. Multiple could fit into a couple of these categories, between infrastructure, youth, others, and then economic development and infrastructure. So really, this is kind of how we tie back to those commission priorities and how we kind of fared with the dollars overall. And that's just kind of where that is. I guess I'll open up to any general questions about anything else related to ARPA here, and yeah.
Thanks, Steve. Vice Mayor.
Do a question. Does this exhaust the ARPA funds, what you have proposed?
This total plan would. Really, right now, we're focused on the 2023 portion, but the total, like 5-6 year plan would utilize the entire ARPA fund.
And is the total ARPA funds that we now have $38 million?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Well, some of that's been spent.
38 million minus what's already been allocated.
What I'm asking then is, how much is still remains of the ARPA funds?
I'm going to do some quick math. I want to say it would be somewhere around 25 to 28 million.
25 to 28. Thank you.
So just a comment just here for a little conversation. So obviously, in fairly short order here, December 1st, we're going to be, all these things will be coming together, right, Manager Risma, to provide a budget proposal to the City Commission. One of our biggest tasks is approving that budget for 2023. So we've got a couple different streams coming in. Over the last few years, now we've had this FFE work that is already coming our way with some proposed spending categories, and that's come out of FFE, correct, and coming our way. And of course now, and for a few more years, we'll have ARPA, which after 26 will be gone, but that is another stream that's kind of building into our overall budget, and then those resources will be gone. So this is all part of this multi-pronged planning, but at the end of the day, the plan is the budget.
Correct.
It's not like a totally separate standalone ARPA budget that happens. This all feeds in overall to our budget. So just as a general reminder for all of us, you know, that's how that works. So this is a portion of it, which we are pulling out to talk about how is this going to fit in the big picture of things here, but it is just one rather, I mean, it's big in itself, but one smaller portion of what will be a $200 million budget plus, I'm sure, altogether. So anyway, at this point, we also, besides this conversation, we've had the opportunity to have some one-on-one conversations about this as well. And so we will have, once again, this broader conversation about our whole budget once we get that on December 1st, you know, basically just after Thanksgiving here. And we'll be making decisions that will relate not just, well, how are we going to spend our ARPA funding, but how does that interconnect with how we're spending all our money and what our plans are as it relates to that. So just helps me think about that. This isn't some separate activity we're doing. This is an activity that's part of our overall budget thinking. Anything else, Manager Risman, you want to say about that?
You want to bring forward next steps?
Yeah, you teed this up really well for me, Mayor.
All right.
All right, so our budget next steps. So tonight we came to talk to you about our proposed ARPA recommendations. December 1st, you'll get an email from me on behalf of the city manager transmitting the formal budget. We do it online. It's an online interactive budget book. And then we'll come back on December 12th with a budget work session here at City Hall. And then following that, we will have our public hearing on January 3rd, and then requesting formal approval on January 17th. So a lot more steps to go, a lot more availability for public input as well, and your input as we move forward.
Thank you very much, Steve. Anything else from the team? Yeah, Manager Smith.
Yeah, I would just add that we have a committee of the whole meeting on December 5th, and right now, we don't have a topic, so we might start talking about budget there, and then have the budget work session on the 12th, so.
That sounds great, Manager Smith. Anything else, sir?
That concludes our presentation. Thank you, everyone who presented, and appreciate all the great work.
I just wanted to follow up on that also. I know that as we sit here together, we all have dreams about what Kalamazoo can be, and that list of dreams just inside the city comes forward, then hard decisions have to be made, just like everybody makes at home, about what you can afford and what you're going to pay for and what's going to get on the list and what's not going to get on the list. But all that said, I mean, that's the work that has to happen. And so inside every department, that this wasn't just something somebody sat down 15 minutes and threw this list together. There's been a lot of discussion that started really, I would say, in the grassroots at our departments and has built up to come to the, sometimes not enviable position of having to say, no for this, yes for that, what seems to fit and check all these various boxes that we're trying to check. And I want to go back to what you said right at the beginning here, just talking about, because we've got our long-term plans that we've done a lot of engagement with the community around, our IK 2025, and how are these things consistent with all those desires, and other things that we have in place as well in terms of our commission ranking of what is important to us, which we just did. Let's talk about that. So once again, that whole process and those decisions that are made over time begins to point us into a direction. All this work gets done. Those evaluation criteria are what you use to try to bring something forward to us here. So that all said, I recognize that is a boatload of work in addition to our everyday jobs have to get done. So thank you for that. Thank you to the team for that. And now, in this iterative process, it's our opportunity to weigh in all the more. And so I look forward to it. I think it's a good idea to talk about on the 5th. I look forward to that. Anything else for the good of the order here? So I just want to remind, did you have something, Commissioner Bruno? Okay, go ahead.
Just wanted to say hi. I see one of my favorite Broncos, Jeff Lillard, is here with us tonight from WU Public Safety. So just wanted to say hi to you.
Appreciate it. So anyone who's watching, our business meeting will start in about a half an hour. Is that right? I can't see the clock exactly. Okay, 7 o'clock. Once again, opportunity for public comments and commission. Great work. Appreciate it. And our committee of the whole meeting is adjourned.